All right, hello and welcome to the Poison Shred Endgame Guide. This is a significant update over what we had on Max Roll. It has been completely updated on Max Roll. I did it all very late last night and also a little bit this morning to get it in the state it's in. Quick TLDR, we are proccing a lot more Poison Creepers due to Landslide procs, and it's really cool looking. I think people are really going to enjoy this stylistically, and it is stronger now. We've moved it up some tier list because of it. It can more reasonably handle higher nightmare dungeons, also just goes faster because it's got more poison creepers. So I'm going to do here, normally I do I record a run and we edit it over it so that it's nice and smooth, but we're trying to do this right before the launch of the season, so I am doing it all live, unedited. This is not ideal, but hopefully you can bear with me. What we're going to do is I'm just going to show you some gameplay here. We'll talk about a little bit of the pros and cons. Hopefully I can not kill myself while I do that. I apologize if the run doesn't go super well. Like I said, this is all live, so there's no editing to make this look extra good. You know, there's no take backsies, so hopefully it goes pretty well. We did pick a pretty good nightmare dungeon, good modifiers to do it. So the gameplay is generally pretty similar to what it was, with the difference of we're just going to proc some landslides in here that are going to help us reset Poison Creeper, especially in larger groups. We're going to do it through two different skills, one being Poison Creeper itself, and then the other one being Trample. So far we haven't gotten one, but hopefully we will soon. I'm gonna actually skip that. There's one instant reset right there. We didn't get that before. That's something we couldn't have got. That's with the new legendary aspect. Subterranean causes that, so we couldn't even do that before. That is a brand new interaction. So it just smooths out the build quite a bit. Lets us go quite a bit faster than we could before. Pop one immediately here. Yep, there's one. I can do it again, or I can hold on to it. There's another immediate proc. It's just so much smoother now. It's so much smoother than it was before, as far as keeping up Poison Creeper and using that to shred through enemies. It just feels so much better than it did. So I don't think I'll do this whole dungeon, but I think you get the you'll get the gist of it here. We'll do a little bit more, just to make it clear that this isn't a fluke. It just does proc it a lot. It is still RNG. That is one of the negatives. There's immediate proc right there. That is one of the negatives on it. Like here, we didn't get it, even though you'd think I would, even on both procs. So that is a downside for sure. You are at the mercy of RNG, and sometimes RNG just kind of sucks. But you're much less at the mercy of RNG than you were before, thanks to just significantly better proc chances with the change we made. Let's try this trample here. Nope, nothing. There's one. Remember, shred can also proc it, so we have three different ways of resetting, and it just really makes it so much better. All right, I think that's probably good for gameplay. That was a good several minutes of it. It's not going to change much. It's not as good on single target. I guess I gotta hit these to leave this dungeon. Not as good in single target as the original was, but I think the trade-off for a much smoother overall experience, much better farming, is gonna be significantly worth it. Like much better this way. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the pros and cons, get into generally what's going on here. I'm just gonna try to get, I'm not gonna leave the game because we are getting ready for actually, I kind of just leave the game because we're getting ready for the season. We're gonna have to start over anyway. Okay, let's there we go. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the pros and cons and the general sentiment of the build. I'm not going to go as in depth as usual because this is a refresh of an existing build, and all of this stuff is on max roll, so you'll be able to check it all out there, see how everything works as far as the build goes. So it's very high mobility, as shred always is. It has strong healing. Yes, masochistic got nerfed. No, it doesn't really matter that much, especially since shred heals itself anyway. Very good healing. It doesn't have any reliance on uniques at all. We do have one unique that we can use in the speed farming version. I was using it there, Waxing Gibbous. It works very well without it. It is a pretty minor upgrade at best. It smooths out the spirit regen, and it probably procs a few more poison creepers, maybe one or two more per dungeon. It may not even be that much. because we do lose Aftershock if we run it, which gives us additional landslides. So this actually can do double landslide when we're not using Wax and Gibbous. All that to mean that we don't need to use a unique in this build at all, making it a good starter option and a good beginner option where you don't need to have gear in front. It has great AoE damage thanks to Poison Creeper and the ability to shred through stuff. It does require a generator from time to time. The way I've set up here, it minimizes how much you need it, but it still will be needed sometimes. It is cooldown dependent, as we are talking about. Poison Creeper needs to proc in order for you to get consistent, good damage on it. It doesn't always proc, which means it's also RNG, but it's much smoother than it used to be, and it's definitely good enough to rise in tiers and be a solid option now. And it's a melee playstyle, which makes it dangerous, which also means Nightmare Dungeon pushing isn't necessarily the best thing. It's not going to be a very good Nightmare Dungeon pusher at all, but the vast majority of people aren't Nightmare Dungeon pushing. They are just playing the game, farming, leveling, trying to maximize the loot they get, and just go kind of fast, and that's what this does well. All right, we'll quickly touch on Season of the Malignant. None of this stuff is tested. It can't be tested yet because it's not live. But this is what I think we're going to have. I think Caged Heart of Revenge is going to be really strong for about every build because of the damage reduction. Caged Heart of Creeping Death looks insanely powerful for this build and might actually make it rise in tiers just alone because it could be so strong. We hit easily 3 CCs just running the build normally. That's a lot more damage that you're going to do. And then add on Caged Heart of the Barber. And this thing might actually absolutely be potentially busted in the season. Honestly, I'm not sure if it's going to be, but I think there's a chance this thing could be busted. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll test some stuff. As far as the skills you're using, Shred, your primary source or primary skill, it's going to apply Blurred Beast. It's going to get you around the map. Storm Strike is your spirit generator, damage reduction. Poison Creeper is your primary method of applying poison for Blurred Beast. Really, really important. That's why we're proccing it so much. Earthen Bulwark's a source of Unstoppable. You probably notice I don't use it very much there. I use it reactionary now instead of proactively. It makes it much better. Trample is also a source of Unstoppable. It also gives a Spirit Gen, and it's also a nice little movement ability, but it also procs Landslide, which gives us, the additional Poison Creepers is amazing. Blood Howl is a great heal that also gives us a lot of Spirit between Trample and Blood Howl. That's a significant portion of our Spirit Gen, along with Spirit on Crit from the Legendary node and Spirit on Kill from the Paragon board. And then we got Landslide, of course, in here, and it's got one job: Pack Leader, proc Pack Leader to get Poison Creepers cooldown to drop, and it does it really, really well, way better than I anticipated. So it's really strong. As far as passives go, Toxic Claw helps us to apply more poisoning, which also helps us with a number of things, including Envenom. Envenom, as far as we can tell, is still a damage multiplier. Even though it shows plus on it now, it still seems to be actually X. Until that changes, we'll assume it's going to stay multiplicative. Call of the Wild is also a damage multiplier for Poison Creeper, very strong. And then we are using Lupine Ferocity, but Earthen Might is also a very good option here. I actually don't know how much difference there is between the two, and if you're going to run Wax and Gibbous, you should run Earthen Might for sure. These are both strong options though. Spirit Bones, Iron Feather for the health. Right now you could go with the movement speed, but right now we're going for the health because this build does have less survivability than the Lightning Shred version. Pack Leader is super important for Poison Creeper, Masochistic for healing. Side Talon, that additional crit, is useful for a bunch of things, including Pack Leader and Masochistic. And then Wariness gives us additional boss damage reduction. This is pretty much take for everybody right now. As far as Paragon board, I won't go through the details of the actual Paragon board. It has not currently changed from previously. I may take another look at this in the future, but right now it's still in a pretty good state. As far as the glyphs you're using, we're using Werewolf, we're using Exploit. Exploit's a significant source of vulnerable for us. We're using Bane for poison damage. We're using Fang and Claw. We're using Tracker, and we're using Territorial. Let me make sure I'm not missing the other there. Tracker is the one that's got the big poison. That's really, really good. Okay. As far as gameplay, you just watch me basically run through it. You shred through enemies. You apply Poison Creeper. You then hopefully Poison Creeper actually it will proc Landslide, and hopefully that resets Poison Creeper. If not, you can also try to use Trample to reset it with Landslide again. Continue to shred through enemies. Hopefully one of those three things will reset it for you at some point. Blood Howl will give you more health and also Spirit Gen, so you can continue to go faster. Use Blood Howl practically on cooldown. Let's see what else we're missing in here. Save your Earthen Bulwark for Unstoppable. You can also use trample for unstoppable, so if you're in heavy CC environments, save trample for that. Otherwise, use it for its spirit regen and for its potential to proc poison creeper. Resource and cooldown management, we've talked about this quite a bit already, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but remember that a lot of what you're trying to do here is based around getting poison creeper to reset, which is why we're using trample, which is why we're shredding a lot. Of course, shredding also for blurred beast. It all kind of synergizes together. The more poison creeper procs you get, the more damage you do. So try to hit things in packs with poison creeper, try to hit them in packs with trample, and continue to shred as much as you possibly can in between. Okay, let's skip this. This is just telling you how to get the different types of gear that you want. As far as starter, early, endgame, late endgame, I won't go into too much detail here except to say this can be played very early. There are several aspects that you're going to have to get through farming, but they're not insanely important. Blurred Beast is obviously pretty important, but most of the stuff you can actually get early on, like Subterranean, the new aspect. This is, you can get this from the season, the chapter 1 of the season. So you have it very, very early. So you can play this build early, and you'll be up and running pretty early. We don't use Grizzly Rage, so we don't need uniques or anything like that, which is just a huge plus. So not hard to get this going. I'm skip build scaling of stat priorities is mostly around poisoning, vulnerable, the stuff that you would expect. Defense is also the stuff you expect, defensive multipliers, etc. Same with stat priorities and gearing options. We have a full table in here to tell you exactly what stats that you should prioritize, along with, of course, the paper dolls, which show you which stats you should have on them. So you should be good to go with that. As far as hardcore, this is not a great hardcore option. I don't recommend it, but if you really want to, there's a few suggestions in here, including using Audacity, which is really going to be good for nightmare pushing and for hardcore in general. We're actually talking with Woody on the podcast about this, and he was really pro this, and Macker was really pro this, and I was kind of down on it, and then I tested it out and played it a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, this is not speed farming, but man, you're gonna do any sort of pushing or hardcore, this is such a good option. This is a really strong item. So I think this is going to become best in slot for both of those scenarios. As far as speed farming goes, we don't change a whole lot. We do add Wax and Gibbous. This is optional. You do not need to add this, and the difference, like I said, is not that big. In some cases, it's actually worse. Like single targets, definitely worse. But if you have it and want to run it and have a little bit smoother spirit generation, this is 100% an option. And then we just add some movement speed into the build as well, and that's pretty much the only changes. Nightmare Dungeon pushing, this is not a good Nightmare Dungeon pusher. I don't recommend it if you're trying to actually do high Nightmare Dungeons, but I have some options in here for you, including Craven, like we were talking about. And consider using Debilitating Roar. Not necessarily needing to make this change, but this might be an option. If you can really control the environment and control the fight, Debilitating Roar gives you a lot of advantages. Okay, a couple of quick frequently asked questions here. Why not Mad Wolf's Glee? Long story short, it doesn't really help poison creepers specifically, and it's a lot of damage reduction to lose on, frankly, a build that doesn't have as much damage reduction as similar builds like Lightning Shred. It's not worth the trade-off. Why Lupine Frosty over Ursine Strength? I give some reasoning here. The fact of the matter is these are very close. You can't really go wrong with either choice, and if you're going to go Wax and Gibbous, definitely go Ursine Strength. I know Boiler, one of the other Druid max roll guys, prefers Ursine Strength in this build, and I can't say he's not wrong. It's just we're choosing these for different reasons. They're both really good choices. We took out Temerity. It used to be in there. Why? It's EHP is terrible. And we just don't need the damage increase that we were getting on the aspect that we were using with Temerity before. The one that gives you, I can't remember the name, the one that gives you damage with a barrier. It's just not needed anymore. So Temerity is gone, and it will probably never return. Beyond that, we've got some mechanic stuff in here. This explains how Blurred Beast works. One thing I will mention, I didn't put in here at some point. I want to an explanation of why we're using Stormclaw in the amulet, which the reason is twofold. Stormclaws is good clear damage when you don't have up creeper, but it also procs from Blurred Beast. So when Blurred Beast crits, you get a Stormclaw, and it's significant scaling damage. It's a lot of damage. There is a bug involved with using Stormclaw and with using poisoning and then scaling it up to the moon. We are intentionally not leaning into that, so This should avoid any clear and obvious bugs that are happening out there with it. To like kill Lilith, for example, we don't even have the Lilith Lilith variant for that reason, because it is so bugged. So this build should be relatively bug free, as much so as we can make it, while still leaning into the really strong aspects of the playstyle. Okay, that's going to cover everything on it. I hope that if you decide to play this build, you really enjoy it. It is a very fun, very thematic build that does a lot of cool things, like the procs of Landslide are just really, really fun. Let me know how you enjoy it in the comments. Enjoy your time in Season 1 in Diablo 4, and I'll see you all again real soon.